What's up YouTube, I'm Guy, and today on the channel we're checking out a watch by Frederique Constant. We're looking at the Frederique Constant Hybrid Manufacture, what they describe as a 3.0 watch. It's not simply just a mechanical automatic movement, it's not a smartwatch, it's an amalgamation of both of those technologies, and the implementation of it is actually really cool. It's something that I've never seen in a watch before. I've had a little bit of experience with some smartwatches and of course a ton of experience with different mechanical and automatic watches, but seeing both of those concepts put into one watch has been really interesting. I'm going to share all of those features with you, as well as the standard features and functionalities that you would find in this watch that are similar to all mechanical or automatic watches in a few minutes. But I wanted to share with you a little background information as to how I got my hands on this watch because it's an interesting story. Probably about a month or so ago, I saw a video by another YouTube channel that was entitled something to the effect of "My Most Hated Watch Brand" or something like that. And in that video, the YouTuber went on to describe why they dislike the brand Frederique Constant. By the end of it, I was a little bit confused because it didn't exactly align with my perception of reality when it comes to this brand. Unfortunately, I don't have a very strong background with their watches, so I couldn't make some sort of response video to that, but I wanted to learn more about this brand and see if there was any validity to what that YouTuber had said about it. With that in mind, I reached out and emailed Frederique Constant, and the good people over there were kind enough to reach back out to me within maybe 15 minutes or less. And we opened a dialogue and started a discussion on how I could get one of their watches over here for me to review. Within a week or so, I had the watch here, and I've had it for a couple of weeks now. I've been testing it, I've been evaluating it, and I'm ready to review it. The short answer, if you're wondering, what do I think about this watch? Well, I do really like it a lot. There's a couple of things that I might like to tweak or change about it, and that goes without saying. No watch is absolutely perfect. But overall, this is a really outstanding offering, and it's really interesting in those smartwatch functionalities or features that it offers that you won't find in your typical or standard mechanical watch. So we're going to jump over to the tabletop. I'm going to give you guys a full review of this watch. We're going to talk about all of the features, all of the functionality, and then I'll come back over here and we will close out with my final thoughts. I wanted to remind you guys, don't forget I am doing a giveaway. I am giving away a pair of Pulsar watches to one viewer. Maybe 1 or 2 videos ago, I announced that giveaway and it is still running. It will be running until June 1st. If you're interested in joining up for that giveaway, go back to my library and find that video. Or click on the link, I'll have it down in my description of this video so that you can learn more about how to become eligible for that giveaway. Alright guys, here we have the Frederique Constant Hybrid Manufacture, what they like to call it as the first 3.0 watch. This is a really nice watch and I have enjoyed having it here now for the past couple of weeks and wearing it, and I'm excited to share all of the features and functionalities that are implemented in this watch with you guys. First things first though, we'll talk about the basic specifications like I generally do when we do a review. Go ahead and zoom the camera out here ever so slightly and we'll cover that stuff. The overall dimensions on this watch come in a little bit larger than I would like for a watch of this style, which is, certainly a dress watch. We have a case diameter, not including the crown, of 42 millimeters and a lug width where the strap attaches of 22 millimeters. We have an overall thickness of just under 13 millimeters on my caliper and a lug-to-lug from one extremity of the case to the other, or the watch's wingspan, which I like to call it, of 49 millimeters. Now, at 22 millimeters where the strap attaches, it does taper down to the buckle side to roughly 18 millimeters. So the strap does have quite a bit of taper on it, and that does present really nicely. This watch comes in at a weight of roughly 83 grams or 3 ounces, so it's pretty light on the wrist. Now, as you can see here, this particular model is in rose gold. This is a rose gold plated high polished stainless steel case. It does have several other options of dial presentation and case material or finish in the catalog, 4 total to be exact. And I'll bring in a picture of each of those so that you can see the differences. Overall, if it was, my preference, I'd go with the stainless steel case with this same silver dial. But the review sample that Frederique Constant sent me was, of course, this rose gold plated version. Now, I want to talk about gold plating. This is a complaint that I have heard some people have about the Frederique Constant brand. It's not solid gold, it's gold plated, and I don't like gold plating. Well, I want to show you something. I mean, first of all, I have no problem with plating. It makes the watch way more affordable, obviously. But take a look at this Seiko that I have here. This Seiko is from 1985. It's 33 years old, I guess. This is a very inexpensive watch, and it is most certainly gold-plated. And if we come in here real close and you look at the plating, yeah, of course, it's scratched up without a doubt, but it's not though as if, even on the clasp, the plating is rubbing off. I think that people that don't like gold plating, with the excuse that the plating comes off over time, I feel like that's largely overstated. This watch has, never been refinished or anything. It's never been serviced. It's just been cleaned, basically. And the plating looks absolutely fine. So I don't think that gold plating in and of itself is a bad thing in terms of durability. Now, whether or not you dislike the prestige of not having a solid gold watch, okay, I guess I have no argument for that. But keep in mind that this is also available in stainless steel finishes as well. I just wanted to go on record as saying that I personally have no problem with the gold plating, and the application of the gold plating on this case, it looks fantastic, and I suspect that it's going to be every bit as durable as that 33-year-old, very affordable, very inexpensive Seiko watch that I have has been over, all of those years. Now, moving right along, this watch does have what they call convex sapphire crystal, and if I kind of bring it in at an angle here, it's just a little bit of a dome. I don't know why they call it convex and not domed. It's certainly, I guess, not a very strong dome crystal, but nevertheless, we do have a nice sapphire crystal. I don't believe that it has any AR coating, but in my experience, I have found that crystals over a white or silver dial don't necessarily need that AR coating. You still get perfectly good legibility over a dial like this as opposed to a black dial. I made note of that in my Tissot Visodate review. One of my complaints with some of the more entry-level watches from the Swatch group is that their AR coating or lack thereof on their crystals makes the crystal really glary, but on that watch it wasn't an issue. Similarly, on this Frederique Constant, there is no issue with glare. I mean, as I pan over towards the extremely bright studio lights, you can see it reflect there, but it's not though as if you're seeing me or the camera really reflecting in that crystal like you would in a watch that has no AR coating and a black dial. So I'm not really put off by the fact that there is no AR coating, and frankly maybe there is, it just wasn't listed in the specs on their website. If there is, I wouldn't be surprised. If there isn't, it doesn't matter because it's not really an issue of glare anyway. This watch does feature a display back, as you can see, and we will show you that display back in more detail and really look at that movement, but I did want to point that out in the specs list. We have a water resist rating of 50 meters, which is, maybe a little bit above average for a dress watch, so no complaints there. We have a sort of antique style onion or ball crown over at the 3 o'clock position. This is, of course, a hand winding movement, and hand winding the crown works perfectly. You get very good a sense of tactile feedback as you wind up that crown. Now this dial is really a very attractive dial in my opinion. It's sort of the highlight of the whole watch. It's a silver dial with a bit of a guilloche decoration. We have printed Roman numeral hour markers, and we have a really nice black hand polished Breguet handset. I guess I was looking it up. What is the style of this handset called? I've also seen it referred to as a pomme, P-O-M-M-E, maybe it's the French word for Apple handset or Breguet handset. I really like this handset, and these are, again, hand-polished handsets, so a little step above in terms of attention to detail with these hands. Now we do, of course, have a date counter down at the 6 o'clock position, and there's a subdial up at the 12 o'clock side. This subdial basically is an indicator for your smartwatch functionality, and I'll go into that in detail here in a few minutes. We also have a really nice brown alligator strap with a deployant buckle, and I will show you this in detail as well. But yeah, the strap on this thing, just, right off the bat, it's absolutely outstanding. Every watch in the manufacturer line, or hybrid manufacturer line, I guess I should say, of the 4 watches available here, similar to this one, all come with a watch winder. And that watch winder serves 2 purposes. Number 1, it winds the automatic movement as you would typically see on any watch winder for an automatic watch. But it's also a charger, and it charges the battery of the electronic components on that extra module that runs the smart functions in this watch. Now the whole movement in this watch is called the FC-750 Manufacturer Hybrid Caliber. It is an automatic hybrid movement. It's 26 joule movement with a 42-hour power reserve, 28,800 vibrations per hour. And of course it does hand wind and hack. As I demonstrated, you can hand wind via the crown. If you pull the crown out, you can hack the movement to set your time. Now, the electronic module for the smartwatch functions that's built onto this watch has a battery life of 7 days. And as you can see on this top subdial here, the very default display that I have it set for shows your power reserve for that electronic module. And you can see it's basically almost all the way up at 100%. There's two scales, an inner scale from 25, 50, 75, 100, and then a sort of 24-hour scale on the outer ring of that subdial. So my default display for that subdial is showing me the power reserve on that battery of the electronic module. You can go into the app, and I'll show you how that works in a few minutes, to set the different features of that module and the subdial and what it displays, but for now, yeah, keep in mind that that's what that subdial is doing for me. Now, once you sync your watch up with your cell phone after you've downloaded the app and you pair it through Bluetooth, all of the functionality that you get out of this, well, most of it anyway, I'm probably not going to cover all of it. You get activity tracking like step monitoring, you get sleep monitoring, you get what they call a dynamic coach. You have world time functionality, which you can program to that 12 o'clock side subdial. You do have the settings for your pusher, and you probably noticed there's a small pusher on the left-hand side of the case here. You can set the default functionality of that pusher within the app. And then my favorite thing, you get movement analytics. The movement analytics, which I'll show you in detail, give you the average daily rate and accuracy of your watch. It also tells you the amplitude of the movement and the beat error. And all of that stuff together will give you an idea of whether or not your watch is running properly and whether or not it might be in need of a service. Obviously, this one's been running great. There's also functionality to back up settings to the cloud in there. There's a lot of stuff that I probably haven't even experimented with. But that's the basic gist of what the smart functions of this watch can do. Speaking of the movement, I did mention that we have a display case back, and I wanted to give you a nice close look at this FC-750 movement. The movement is really nicely decorated. It's got a lot of perlage, and it's got some Côte de Genève decoration. The skeletonized rotor, and if we come in a little bit closer, you can see that it is inscribed with Frederique Constant Manufacture, and the little star there in the middle is of a, I don't know, is that a gold tone? Is it brass? I'm not sure what the material is, but it looks very nice. You have a lot of blued screws throughout the movement. I'm sure that most of this is machine decorated and probably not hand decorated, but I couldn't say for sure. But you get a really nice look at this very well decorated, very handsome movement. Given the level of what this watch is, this isn't a super high-end watch. It's certainly entry-level luxury, I think, as I've heard it described. That's the nicest looking movement on any watch that I've had come through here so far. And it's kind of impressive looking. It's actually a movement worth seeing in a display back, as opposed to some of the much more affordable watches that I reviewed in the past. So I want to touch on a few things in a little bit more detail here. First things first, the case. And while I did mention that this case is rose gold, and rose gold isn't my favorite type of finish in general, whether it's solid gold or gold plated, I don't really care. But just the presentation of it, it's not personally my style. I can say that the execution of the finish is very, very good. The shape of the case is interesting, as we can see here. It's kind of like a, I don't know, circular, almost kettle profile shape. The bezel is sort of a domed bezel. It's not a simple flat bezel that you see on a lot of watches. It's definitely sort of an antique or old style, and it's really accentuated by that crown over at the 3 o'clock position in an antique onion or ball style. It's a really nice presentation, though. It's just a little bit larger than I would prefer. I wish it came in at about 40-ish millimeters instead of 42, but I just don't know, maybe technologically, maybe they couldn't make it smaller to integrate that electronic module that is running all the smartwatch functionality. That's sort of my theory anyway. But we have nice thin lugs that come off of this circular case. And yeah, overall the presentation is very nice. There's no sharp edges. Everything is very flowing, soft, dehorned, however you'd like to describe it. And overall, the presentation's really good, other than the size just being a hair large for me. Probably the main event of this watch, of course, is the dial. It's a really nice silver, kind of like a mixture of silver and white. And you can see at the center where the branding is, Frederique Constant Genève, and the hybrid branding, there's some what do you call it? The word has just suddenly escaped me. Guilloche, that's what I'm looking for. There's some guilloche decoration on the center, and around the outer seconds track, you can see there's also a little bit of decoration there. The inner hour track, which is definitely silver, is recessed into the dial, and you have really nice, cleanly printed Roman numerals throughout. Of course, the subdial at the 6 o'clock position and 12 o'clock positions are integrated nicely, and they look really, really good as well. The handset I really like a lot. This is the first watch that I've had with this Breguet style handset. It looks great. I did mention that this is a hand-polished handset, and that little extra attention to detail, and that's cool. If we get it in some light here, you can kind of see the nice effect that it has when light bounces off of it. It's hard to catch it right in my studio with these bright lights, but trust me, it does look fantastic in person. I shared a few pictures of this watch on my social media, and somebody had mentioned like, oh, the branding of the Hybrid in particular is just a little bit too bold. It stands out, kind of detracts from the overall look of the watch. I kind of agree. I think that branding doesn't really work perfectly for me. It's at arm's length on my wrist, not some sort of terrible eyesore, but it just feels a little bit like modern, I guess. It's a combination of this font and just how it's placed, I guess. You have this really kind of antique looking watch. I don't know, maybe it makes sense because this is a hybridization of old world watchmaking techniques with this modern electronic smartwatch revolution. Maybe it makes sense, but the overall branding on the dial, yeah, I guess possibly it detracts a little, but I certainly don't hate it. It's not a reason that I would say I'm not going to want to buy or wear this watch. Again, at arm's length on the wrist, it's not nearly as noticeable as it is zoomed in here. But I suppose if, given my own personal preference, if they had, let me decide how to design it, I might try to think of something a little bit better flow to the design of the branding on the dial. Speaking of the dial, I had mentioned that there's the subdial up at the 12 o'clock position. The default view here is showing the battery level of the electronic module. It's a 7-day power reserve, and you can see it's basically at 100% right now. If you push this pusher over on the left-hand side, you can select between a single push and a double push to show 2 more favorites that you have stored in the app on your phone. In my case, the first push shows the current 24-hour time. So we know that it is 5:20, or as you can see there on the dial, 1700 hours. We also can do a double push, and it will show another time zone. In this case, I have it set on the Pacific, I'm funny, I can't talk. The Pacific time zone. And if you saw there, I'll do it again because it's resetting, you can see that it is 1400 hours or 1420 in the Pacific time zone. So that's what I have my 2 favorites set at on this watch. There's a couple of more options, and I'll show you those once we get to the phone app portion of this review, but that's the way that I have my smartwatch subdial set. So here's the phone app on my iPhone. When you first start up the app, it's going to ask you to push the top left pusher button of your watch 1 time to pair up with the app. Now, the very first time you use it, you have to go through a little bit of a setup process, and unfortunately I've already done that, so I can't go ahead and do it here. But I've pushed that pusher on the watch, and you can see up at the top right here, this little guy is spinning, so it's syncing with my watch, and it's going to get all of the information. Now, this is the home screen. It gives you some basic readout of your goals in terms of step tracking and sleep and the dynamic coaching thing that they offer. This is not the most interesting screen to me, but I'll scroll through all of them so you can see what else is in here. The first screen after that is your step counter or activity tracker. You can see, since I've been wearing the watch for a little while today, 1,108 steps. Obviously, you can go in here when you set it up and set a goal. I set a goal for 10,000, which I never reach any given day, so that is my shortcoming, not the app shortcoming, but it does track your steps. The next screen you swipe over is a sleep tracker. Now, I don't sleep with watches on, so I've never tested this out. I don't know how it works, but apparently when you're going into sleep, you hold this pusher down on the watch for, I think, 3 seconds, and that sets it into sleep mode, and it kind of keeps track of how you sleep. You can tell it if you want to sleep with the watch on, or if you want to put the watch under your pillow. Again, I haven't used it because I don't sleep with a watch on ever, but that functionality exists. The next screen is this dynamic coach, and it kind of tracks all of your progress over the course of a week, tells you your activity and your sleep and everything. It's basically just a little bit of like personal analytics. Now, the real analytics thing that I really like a lot is the watch analytics. And if we can see here, we have 3 graphs. The top graph is the rate. And I'll come in here a little bit closer. You can see that my current rate on this past Thursday was 9.11 seconds per day fast, but then it shows you the average over the last week there of 3.8. Now, I've been experimenting with laying the watch in different positions overnight, and I found that in the crown up position I've been resting it in, it's raising the rate quite a bit. The average is still pretty low because generally I haven't been keeping it in that position. But in particular yesterday when I laid it overnight in that position, the watch ran a bit faster. It's cool that you can experiment like that. You can set the watch dial up, crown down in different positions, and then look at this app the next day and see what the average rate was over the week and for that particular day. Now, I have found that in general, the watch is never more, it's always a little bit fast, and it's never more than about 6 minutes fast, like if I store it dial up at night. And as you can see, the average there for the past week has been 3.68 seconds per day. That's excellent. The next graph is the amplitude. Did I say graphed? Of course I mean graph. And the average amplitude is 295 degrees, and then the previous reading from yesterday was 301 degrees. That's an excellent amplitude rating for any mechanical or automatic watch. I'm not going to go into too much detail on what that means, but bear in mind that's a really good reading. The final one is your beat error, and we're getting an average of 0.36 milliseconds. And yesterday it was 0.32. That's another excellent reading. Again, I've talked about this in my time grapher review. As you know, I do have a time grapher, and I've reviewed that, and I explained a lot of this stuff in that review. I'm not going to go into too much detail here. Suffice to say, 0.32 milliseconds is excellent. And down at the bottom, you can see your watch is working properly listed there with a little green check mark. So if there was a problem, you would be able to just look on your phone here and be like, oh, something's not running right. You'd be able to reach out to customer service and have the watch serviced if it's under warranty, or if it's outside of warranty and it's just, due for a service. You'll have a better understanding or idea of when that's going to come up than you might have with a standard mechanical watch. I really enjoy this analytics feature of the watch. I honestly kind of wish this was available in all watches. If it was, I wouldn't have to have bought a time grapher. That's the other alternative, is you spend a few $100s and you have a time grapher so you can check these things yourself. Again, that it's integrated right here into this electronic module is really cool. Final stuff. So here's where you set your subdial. As I had mentioned, my default view was the show battery level. My single click was the 24-hour display, and my double click was the world time display. And down here you can set which time zone. I have it set to the Los Angeles Pacific Daylight Time, as you can see there. There was one other button there that I wanted to double check on. Oh, you can set the duration for how long the display shows when you implement or click one of those buttons to show one of these options on that subdial. So that's all right there as well. In the settings screen, you can go in, you can set your goals, sleep mode placement. This is where you tell it whether you want to sleep with it on your arm or under your pillow. Start sleep mode is the same thing, I believe, is just holding in that pusher for 3 seconds. Some settings for your watch, your account, your profile. You can change the display theme of the app, and that's basically everything that you get in the app here. It's pretty simple and straightforward, but it's pretty powerful in all of the functionality that it offers you. I think the ones that most people are going to enjoy the most is going to be the step counter, obviously, to keep track of your goals for walking those 10,000 steps a day, and that watch movement analytics screen. I think that that's absolutely outstanding. So I had mentioned the strap briefly at the beginning of this review. This is a real alligator strap, and it is fantastic. You can see that the grain of the alligator there, it's very, very beautiful, honestly, is the best way to describe it. I've never had a real alligator strap. And when you see a leather strap with a fake embossed print next to something like this, there is a huge difference. You can tell that there's a certain level of quality that goes into this strap that you never get out of a basic leather strap. The backside of the strap is lined, and it's inscribed there with the Frederique Constant logo and branding. It says 22 because it's a 22 millimeter strap. On the right hand side you can see alligator, and I don't know what that, Fiat Main or something, I don't know what that is. Overall though, it is a fantastic, beautiful strap. Now this does have a deployant buckle. It's very thin, it's a lightweight material, it matches the finish of the watch case, in this particular example, rose gold, stainless steel there. Using this deployant clasp or buckle is one of the downsides about this watch, and it's not significant, but here's the problem that I have with it. You know, setting it up is simple, but as you can see, there's not like push buttons like you might see on a typical deployant clasp. So when you put it through and then you fit the nub down into the hole that you want, now it's basically straightforward, it's simple to use. It's just friction locked so that when you close it up, it locks there. You slide the strap through the keepers and just push down and it locks into place. This all works perfectly well. I really do like this strap, and I actually like the clasp with one exception. Here's the exception, or the problem that I have with it. When you want to maybe adjust it, to get the little nub of the clasp out of that hole there, it's a real problem. I kind of have to use a little bit of a pry bar, like on my multi-tool, and pry it up. I can't just do it with my bare fingers. It's really in there. On a strap that has like the deployant, the two push buttons on either side, you would usually just push that and then it would flip up very easily. Since this doesn't have that functionality, it's just a little bit harder to manipulate in this position when you're wanting to reset it. Now, this never comes up because, how often are you going to need to reset the sizing? But keep in mind that that is kind of one of the few shortcomings about this watch. And it's just this buckle, or this clasp, I guess. Just the manipulation of it in changing the size once it's set is a little bit difficult. It is a really nice, low-profile, lightweight buckle or clasp. It works perfectly once you have it sized up exactly where you want it. It retains the condition of your strap because you're not going to be pulling it in and out of a standard style pin buckle like you would on just a regular strap. So you're not going to wear out these holes nearly as quickly, and the strap should last you much longer. That's a big upside to this style of deployant clasp or buckle. But yeah, just that one little shortcoming on it that I wish was a little bit easier to change once you decide like, oh, it's actually a little too tight, I want to move it fore or aft one notch on the strap. Again, not a big deal, but I'm trying to find little things about this watch that I would change if I could, and the size being one of them, this buckle, just a small little tweak on that. Otherwise though, implementation of this entire presentation of the entire watch is really well done. How does it wear on my 6 3/4 inch wrist? Well, it wears pretty well, honestly. Again, I don't typically wear a watch of this style at this size, 42 millimeters, just a hair larger than I would prefer, but it's very doable, honestly. It's not unwieldy, it's not uncomfortable. It works great. I would probably on paper say, oh, that watch is too big, but having it in my possession and on my wrist, I've worn it for, several days, and I have never felt like it was too much to handle for my wrist, and, I like the way it looks, I like the way it presents. So I guess, moral of the story is, while you might think like, oh, on paper something sounds too large, you can never really be sure until you have it in hand and you've tried it on. For example, I don't know, I've had dive watches that on paper, they say they're 44 millimeters in diameter. That sounds way too big for me. But then when I get it in hand, it has shorter lugs or, certain presentation aspects that just make it appear or wear a little bit smaller. This also does wear pretty good for me. I wouldn't go so far as to say it wears small, but it doesn't overwhelm my wrist at all, despite the fact that it's a little larger than something that I might normally consider. Alright guys, well, that's my presentation of this Frederique Constant Hybrid Manufacture. I'm going to jump back over to the studio view and close this video out with some final thoughts, so stick with me for a couple of more minutes for that. And yeah, we will wrap this up. So what are my final thoughts about this Frederique Constant Hybrid Manufacture? Well, I do like it quite a bit. There's some things I would tweak, yeah, absolutely. Number one, I'm not a huge fan of rose gold, but fortunately they offer it in some other color variations and case finishes, so that's not really a criticism of the watch in general. It just happens to be that the one they sent me wouldn't have been the ideal watch for me, but that's perfectly okay. Number two, the size of this watch is a little bit on the large size for me. I have roughly a 6 3/4 inch wrist, and for a basically dress watch, I probably wouldn't wear something over 40 millimeters too often. This comes in at 42 millimeters, so it's a little bit on the large size, but I have been wearing it quite a bit, and I gotta be completely honest, it wears pretty well on my wrist. It's not overwhelmingly unwieldy. I just wish they could dial it back a hair. Now perhaps it's impossible given the way that this is manufactured with the mechanical movement and that electronic module built on top of it. They probably can't bring the thickness down or make it thinner, I guess is a better way to put it. Maybe they can't trim down that size. They do have some smaller watches in their catalog. I know they don't only make larger watches, so I'm sure that there were some engineering reasons that went into the decision to make this a 42 millimeter watch that comes in at roughly 12.5 to 13 millimeters thick, if I remember correctly. Overall, though, I wish they could dial it back just a hair and it would be just about perfect. Another thing to probably touch on is the price point, and while I don't know exactly what the MSRP of this watch is going to come in at, because I'm not sure if it's really widely available at retail yet, I think it's going to be somewhere around $3,500 US, and that is not inexpensive. I've heard this brand described as entry-level luxury, and I think that's a good description. If you look at their catalog, they have a lot of really nice, really refined watches that certainly do have that luxury feel to them. Mostly dress watches, as a matter of fact, probably entirely dress watches. I don't think they do much in the way of sports watches at all yet. But very, very nice watches that are a little bit more on the higher end side. Probably not all the way up to some of the other quote-unquote luxury brands, but it certainly is approaching that. And it's going to be out of reach for a lot of people that are interested in watches that follow my channel. I get that. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that watches that currently are available widely often come in at prices at retail or gray market much cheaper than what the MSRP is stated on their website. So I suspect that once this is widely available, we'll probably see good deals on it. And if it's a watch you're interested in and you want to keep an eye out for it, yeah, I would, just hold out and see what happens with the market. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I appreciate you tuning in as always. I really enjoyed having this watch here. I think it's pretty outstanding, barring a few little things that I might have mentioned that I would like to tweak. I really do like it quite a bit. If you're looking for ways to support the channel, as always, down in the description, you can find a list of ways that you can help me out. The easiest, of course, is just to subscribe and watch all of my videos. But if you'd like to help me in other ways, you can always go over to my social media accounts and join up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Also, I can use more support over at Patreon if you want to help and give a little bit every single month. That would be greatly appreciated. Finally, one of the easiest things that you can do is use my Amazon associate links when you shop on Amazon. If you see something that I review and you'd like to buy it, click on the link in my description to Amazon and I get a small commission if you buy that or anything else for that matter. That would be greatly appreciated. Well, I'm going to sign off here with this video, and I will be back later on this week or possibly early next week with another review. I hope to see you then. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye now.